a lot of confusion, a lot of questions coming because I'm an Azure specialist. People are asking me, so exactly what did they say yesterday on stream about CDNs and all that? So I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight on what that's all about. I mean, who ever heard of a CDN? Well, I'm going to show you some stuff. And that's what I'm going to show you tonight. Some of that. I mean, I can't make it, as boring as it is in Azure courses, you guys. I've taught Azure courses for years. That's where all our stuff comes from, the simulator. I knew that from years ago. I haven't bored anybody with this stuff, and I'm not going to bore with you tonight. I'm going to give you an insight, though, and I'm going to keep it simple and easy. Because, I teach IT people, and they have to have it deep. And they have to have a base understanding of a ton of stuff. So, yeah, it can be boring for them, right? But, hey, Mike's in the crowd. Overloaded with 100 million requests, which gave us the 97% tree. Yeah, super tight. That's it. But, what exactly is it, right? Azure and CDNs, great timing. Yeah, so, I mean, it's spawned on what happened yesterday. I mean, I tuned into that, and I just shook my head. Again, I'm disgusted with how they handled the whole thing. So is the rest of the world. I'm always looking positive, though. I'm always looking at, it's going to get better, and they can change it on the fly. And I mentioned this before. They can change what's happening with our simulator on the fly. They can allocate hundreds of thousands of resources with a click of a mouse. And I've done that for thousands of companies for years. I did all of that as a consultant and a trainer. I also did train the trainer. I also did train the Fortune 500 IT personnel who have to manage their Azure. So I never talk about that. I don't sit and brag about that. And I'm not here to brag about it tonight, but I'm letting you know that that's my background. So I can speak to that. And what I've done is just collected together in the last 20 minutes before stream started. That's why it was a bit late. I gathered together a couple images to help. The big area for IT right now is cloud services, whether it be Azure or whether it be AWS from Amazon, whether it be Google Cloud Services. IBM has their own cloud services. Every one of these big, huge cloud services, mainly Microsoft and Amazon, are the two biggest. Google's in the third of the biggest cloud services around the world, and there are certifications in each one of those areas. Those certifications cost thousands per week. Each student was paying $3,000 to be in my class. I have a class of 10 or 20, and I didn't get that income. I mean, I was paid by the training company, or I was paid by Microsoft. But each of those people would take probably 3 courses at $3,000 each. Well, the company paid for that. And then they would write 3 different exams, or 4, at about $150 to $200 each. And then they would be certified and allowed to manage their company's resources. So, this is the stuff that I was teaching you guys. And that's the stuff that I did day to day. And then I would run here to the studio and teach flying or have fun with flying. And that's what we did. So you guys saw me sometimes really worn out. It's like, Howard does not look well. Well, after teaching IT in depth all day long, and then running into the studio here to go fly was really tough. Honestly, it was. And so that's why today, I want to share with you some of that. And let's see what that looks like. So it is interesting because it affects every one of our simulators. Every one of us flying 2024 and even 2020 comes from Azure's CDNs, comes from Azure's cloud services. And so I just want to give you guys an insight. I should have done this for 2020 and then said, by the way, it's going to get even better, or even worse in 2024. And so that's what's happening here. So this will help you understand. And they triggered a bit of that yesterday when yesterday when I tuned in. I only watched about 10 minutes of it. I skimmed. I don't have time to sit and watch 4 hours or 3 hours or whatever it was. And because I'm trying to pull lessons together. I'm doing the whole certification thing coming up. So the things I did here was, our CDNs were overloaded. And, I think they actually did say content delivery network, but, they kept talking. They showed graphs of faults and graphs of whatever was going on there. And I'm looking at their graphs going straight out of Azure. You just pull those charts and boom, boom, you got this data at your fingertips. They could have, day one, adjusted as soon as they saw a lot of us sitting at 97%, thousands of us sitting at 97%. They could have said, wow, we're being overloaded. Services aren't being, let's just allocate twice as many services. Let's just allocate 10 times as many services. Let's just allocate 100 times. And it's a click, you guys. It's a click, but it costs money. It costs money as it's being consumed, though. It's not prepaid. So they could have easily given us enough headroom day one. They got the capacity, and I'll talk about that in a second. And they could have easily given us an easier launch. They told us it was a surprise how many people actually moved up. And, you know, a lot of us know that that's, you know, politics. It's not really a surprise. They knew how many prepaid bought the SIM. A lot of us, most of us. I would say, and, you know, this is something you do in Azure. We predict what a company, and I helped a lot of companies with this, you guys. You predict how many resources they need, how many servers, which some of you, as soon as I say that, you might gloss out, but just hang in there, okay? How many physical boxes that are on your premises at your company, how many of those can go into the cloud? And now we'll use those same servers in the cloud. How many of those can move? And you physically can ship hard drives to Azure and they'll put them into their servers, or you can just start new servers there or services. All right, so there, you know, that's a thing that you can do as a IT person in your company. You can move your server room stuff to the cloud, and that's what I helped companies do for years. Right, and that's what we did. That's the certification. So, you know, that's now we have the simulator. Now this is a game. I have to say it. It is a game. It even says it when the splash screen comes up, loading game. You know, I mean, it's on your PC. It's at home, and so this thing has to load, and now it has to go and collect stuff from the nearest CDN. So the nearest CDN to where you are in the world. And that's what this is all about, you guys. I want to show you what that looks like, all right? And give you an idea of why that's so important and how. I mean, I'm not here to show you how they screwed up. I know how they screwed up. If anyone wants to hear it from me, I'll talk about it offline. Doesn't matter. The fact is it's done. The fact is they're adding more resources. They're smoothing it out. More and more of us are playing the game. Yes. And it's working. I was successful first day. I installed on 3 machines. At least one of them got installed. P Delta Bravo got his laptop installed within the first half hour. And then most of us had troubles after that. The day after, I got my Xbox installation done. And that same day, I got my main PC installation done, which is what we have here. My Steam installation, I never even went back to it because it was a mess. So, you know, it eventually ironed out, and they obviously added more resources. So however many there are of us, they still haven't said. But let's say this, and this is part of how you predict what services are going to be needed. So 15 million users are playing 2020. 15 million users of us are playing 2020. And they had a breakdown of that. 5 to 6 of us are what they call hardcore simmers. Whether that means we're already pilots like I am, or whether that means we take it as seriously as I am, doesn't mean that. It means that a lot of them might be flying airliners and they want every avionics to work perfectly, every switch, every breaker, everything has to happen right. That's a hardcore simmer. The ones who play it casually, they want to gain points, they want to have rewards, they want to be on leaderboards. That's another whole group of about 3 million people. There are different categories of users of 2020. Now, they've got 15 million people. They're not going to all move to 2024. And I even recommended to people who were hesitant, then don't do it. Stay with 2020. It works. It's great. It's refined. It's got all the updates. It's great. Stay with it until you see what happens. I recommended that to hundreds of people. And they stayed there. So let's say, conservatively, let's say out of 15 million people who already own 2020, let's say 5 million, just 1/3 of them, 5 million are going to move to 24. And maybe even, they got to think about this, maybe even on day 1 launch, because they've been teasing us all year, right? It could even be day 1 launch. So conservatively, 5 million people are going to connect around the world and pull down services. And they planned for 200,000. So that's what I'm saying. I don't like being negative. I don't like finding fault, and I can't fix it for them. Who am I? As I choke on that one. Who am I? So, you know, so we're not going to solve it for them. They obviously know what they're doing. They obviously figured it out, and they obviously allocated resources at greater cost, of course. So here's the question for you guys as I get into this. I want to show you more of this, and then we'll move on to other things in the sim and the fun stuff that we do, right? But, you know, if I were to say this to you, businesses use Azure. Businesses use these same cloud services we're about to talk about, right? The same cloud services we use in our simulator now, and we've been using for years, right? Businesses use these things, and they are billed by the second. And you could say, oh, they're billed by the minute. They're even billed by the second. if I'm going to use 20 servers to do something for my business, they're going to start the clock ticking and they're going to bill me for that. Now they'll give you an hourly, they'll even give you a monthly, they'll even give you some kind of estimate so you can plan. There's a whole budgeting section in Azure. If you were to go in and budget, I'm going to need 20 servers, I'm going to need them at their peak in the middle of the day, I'm going to need and you just go down the list of what you're going to need. They give you a number of your monthly cost. This is operating expense, not capital. Capital is buying hardware and software, right? This is operating expense, monthly expenses like you pay rent, right? You're renting Microsoft's services in the cloud. You're also going to increase your internet speed and make it more reliable. And in many companies, we made 2 internet connections. Sometimes one weighs each, all right? One goes down, one goes up. But most times they're just redundant. 2 fiber or very high-speed internet connections in case one goes down, the company still operates. All this redundancy, extra servers and extra services, just so that if anything goes down, which it does, other things can keep going for us. Okay, it's just like in any airplane that's supposed to go over water, big bodies of water, has to have 2 engines or more, or it has to have all of the typical life raft, PFDs, and water life-saving equipment on board, right? You know, in a Cessna 172, we can't carry all that equipment, so we don't fly over water with a single engine. So we have 2 engines for redundancy, same thing. One engine quits, we can still fly with 1 engine using the parameters of a 1-engine flight. Same thing with IT. And I use the example of airplanes and airliners when I talk about redundancy and I talk about extra servers, just so that if one server goes down for maintenance or for fault, we don't even know. Our business doesn't even see that service go down because other servers are taking the load and sharing the load. And it's actually called load balancing. So that's a thing that happens, you guys, and it happens in businesses. And those businesses pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Some of them millions of dollars a month, because they're huge companies, to have these services. And it's actually cheaper, believe it or not, than buying real hardware, buying the software, the network, the infrastructure, and building it all and having the expertise to build it all and keep it maintained and replace it every 5 years. And all that mess of physical server rooms is now gone. And now they have a monthly expense, a whole different category in accounting. So that's what it is. And that's for business. And they pay through the nose, honestly, for all that stuff. So my question to you is, us as simmers, we buy this product, we fly this product, and we're using those services every single minute. Who the heck's paying for it? Right? I'm saying that because that's the truth, right? Who is paying for all those services, all those servers? And this is why they're not going to throw the capacity for 5 million on day one. They're not going to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of servers at us and go, I hope they use them all, right? They're going to be very conservative, and they did. 200,000 is what they planned for. 200,000 connections, if you will, all right, we'll use that expression, of us who are connecting and downloading the SIM. Now, downloading, it's one thing. That's just a file, 15 gigabytes. Now we're going to run the SIM, and it's going to go download a bunch more stuff. And it's going to go talk to a bunch of data. You heard about this huge 9 terabyte database. It's a SQL database sitting in the cloud that's distributed around the world, and we're going to go tap into it as we fly. All the time, every single day we fly. Who's paying for that? So, you know, it's all about business. It's all about business model. It's all about who's going to pay for that? You know, so I don't understand the business model. I don't get how Microsoft is going to make money on this SIM. I know we paid a lot for this SIM. Some of us paid over $200 for the SIM. But, all right, so that might cover some of the Azure costs. But, okay, 5 million users at maybe an extra 100 we're paying just because of all those services. Okay, eventually that runs out. Who pays for the services as the SIM goes on to its 5th year? So my point is, and without getting into too many details in here, you notice on the title there, I've got some of my background there. I've got 17 certifications. I don't put them all on there. But the ones that matter right now is Microsoft Certified Trainer, Systems Engineer, and Cloud Specialist. And those are just, you know, a few that I have. But these are the things I can speak about. This over here on the left that you see behind me here, and let me go over to teacher mode. I think it's probably the best way to show this because, again, I'm in this screen here, I am in the way of some of these graphics. So, you know, I threw this together in 20 minutes, so I didn't have time to think about where I would be standing. Is this the one right here? Yeah, that's the one. Or is it this one? Hey, there's another one behind me. No, it must be this one. Okay. And I'll probably just move myself over a little bit. I've changed cameras and locations since. Let's do that. You don't need to see all of me. Okay, so here on the left, you see just beside my face here, that is actually what they call an Azure pack. And this is a portable, this is the way they're done now, you guys. They're inside that one box, and you can see the person in front. You can see the person in front of it. I'll show you a bigger picture of that. That could hold 200 servers right now. It's a server room as a complete module. And that, you can see it sitting on a flatbed truck. They build them in factories and ship them to the Azure centers. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? So I want to give you that picture later, but let me just show you a couple of these things up close and personal. And the first thing I want to show you, and bear with me for the next, I'd say 10 minutes, and then we'll go on to the fun stuff that we do, you guys. But I want to give you this insight, all right? And I've had so many people ask me, because some people know my background, and why can't you talk about this? Why couldn't you be on their dev stream talking about this? Because they handled it, they did all right, right? So they're great. So what you see here, you guys, these are the other cloud services, cloud platforms. This is where we're getting our data for our simulator. We're getting it from cloud services. Cloud services, and I'll give you a definition, simply mean someone else's data center. Could be anywhere else in the world. Could be next door in the next building. Even your server room, some IT people call it the cloud. You're getting your emails at work on your screen from the cloud. And they go like, okay. And they're looking out the window, you know. The server room could be called the cloud too. It could be people are connecting from home back to work to the cloud. So the cloud is just a loose term to mean someone else's servers, okay, in some other building typically, all right? And so here we have services from Amazon. This is a pie chart, right? And this is services from Azure, 28%. Matter of fact, Azure actually holds a ton of government services too. CIA, FBI, you know, they have government data centers. That's all they are. Very secure, just for government. You know, I mean, they're big, they're huge. They got deep pockets and they build these things. Each data center is certainly millions, but each data center, the newer ones, are in the billions to build these things. Unbelievable. Warehouse size with tons of electronics in them. IBM's cloud up here, and it's shrinking. It was a little bigger. Google's cloud platform doing well. There's Google certifications for their cloud platform, and certainly Amazon, which is called Amazon Web Services, AWS. You'll hear about that. All right, so you hear people say Azure versus AWS. All right, and they're neck to neck. Right now, Azure looks, in this pie chart, Azure's ahead with 28% of the business. You know, this could change depending on rates, depending on sales, depending on, you know, how people are happy with their services, etc. All right, so those are cloud services, meaning data centers somewhere in the world, and in fact, they are in each country where your data lives. And then there's a lot of rules about this, like in business, your data for your company has to live on your soil of your company. All right, so here in, where am I right now? Here in Florida, I can't connect back to my cloud services in Canada, although I can, technically. My data for my company, my corporation, my data lives in Canada, and I have to have a secure connection if I want to go and connect to it, but I can't store it here in Florida because it's my Canadian corporation. It's got to hit a data center in Canada. So these are some of the rules, right? So your data in business has to stay in your country, on the soil of your country, all right? Unless there's no data centers for it, and then you have to get special permission. So, you know, they have to build these things in each country where there's business. Is there potential business in that country? Build a data center, throw a few million at it, you know? So that's the idea behind it. All right, so that gives you a bit of, I don't know if that's interesting so far, you guys, but let's get into more of the simulator stuff, right? And that's what I'm going to do here. Mike says, what happened yesterday? Yeah, someone else's computer, yeah. What happened yesterday, Mike says, was the dev stream, where Seb was talking about, and, you know, Jorg again apologized at the start of the stream, and he apologized again at the end of the stream, and, you know, he's going to keep apologizing like 1,000 times because the buck stops there, that's for sure. Cloud typically means a server room. Cloud typically means where you have servers serving data, not people's workstations, all right? So in the simplest form, I like what Ace says when he, you know, someone else's computer. We typically don't use the cloud expression to mean someone else's computer. We simply mean someone else's server or services. And I'll talk about services. I mean, I don't think I'll get into the detail about services themselves, but when we don't see the actual servers, but the service is coming. You guys have been doing this since, I'm trying to think of, could it even be early 80s? How long, let's see in chat, how many of you have been doing email, but you had to connect to your ISP, as we called it back then? They're still called that, but that was our earliest form of cloud computing before Compaq finally made the term cloud, right? But when we take a look at getting email into your computer, or even on your BlackBerry or on your Windows device, as we had them back then, when we got emails on these devices, where the heck did that come from? It came from somebody's email server, a box made for servers with a server operating system, whether it be Linux or whether it be something else, or Windows or whatever. So we got this email from a service provider. The word service provider. What service were they providing? Email services. Until we started doing web services. Oh, wait a minute, web services. Now they're providing websites for us. We can make a website and leave it on their servers. So we were doing services for years with cloud. Your ISP was the cloud. And where were they? Well, they might have been in the same town as you, but probably not. You were connecting to their servers using the internet, and their servers were offering up what is you're asking, depending on the protocol, email protocol, or whether it be web services protocol or whatever. And so we've been doing this client, which is you with a tiny little program on your little PC, connecting to a server, which is delivering the data and even exchanging it on a big PC. And we've been doing this same thing for years. Now, they talked yesterday about client versus server. And they talked about now we can take all those world updates and just put them on the servers. And Jane even mentioned it too in the stream yesterday, right? We'll just put them on the servers. We don't have to download all that stuff anymore. So we're still only at 15 gigabytes. We just had an 800 and something megabyte update on Monday. And we got another one coming, which they say is bigger, on next Monday. This is rare, but it's typical at the start of a new product. They're going to update our local little client of only 15 gigabytes. That's what they're updating. Because something on our interface that we keep local has to be updated. That's rare. They're not going to do that very often. We're rarely going to see an update coming into our little box, our little PC, our little simulator that starts everything. That's all it's there for. It gives you the interface. It gives you the stuff they don't have to stream. It gives you the start for your sim. Everything else comes in over internet. And eventually, as you're flying, more stuff comes in about world scenery and all the rest of that too. So how, when you're looking at this diagram you're seeing in front of me, they mentioned CDNs yesterday, and their first explanation in their YouTube video was we had services that went down because they were overloaded. Understandable. They had way too many people hitting these services that were only supposed to go to capacity of whatever. We heard 200,000 was tested. All right, but so at first they said services weren't available. New services weren't available in this new SIM, and that's why everybody had trouble. Yesterday, they said, well, the CDNs got overloaded. Is that the same thing they were talking about when they did the YouTube video about services not being available? I mean, yeah, there's some partial truth in there. But let me say this, you guys. This picture explains it all as far as when you connected to start the SIM, to download it and get it going, and continually forever after, you were connecting to a local data center wherever you live. All right, I'm going to use this expression up here for Canada. I'm going to use this expression for USA. As a matter of fact, when you look at the real data center locations, the USA has the most amount of business they get is from the USA, including the government. In Canada, we have in most countries, you have 2 data centers. For redundancy, again, just like airliners with 2 engines, 2 liners with two engines, airplanes with 2 engines. So in Canada, one's in Toronto, one's in Quebec City. And each of these data centers are worth millions of dollars. They're sizes of huge warehouses, like Amazon warehouses, and they contain literally hundreds of thousands of computers and computing power. And so these things are huge. And when they build these things, there's redundancy built in. There's fiber cable backup between them, connectivity between every single one. And you can see in here, this diagram is simply showing you that in your storage account, because you own this Azure account, any one of us can own an Azure account for your business or for yourself, we can put content, in this case, let's say the flight simulator 15 gigabyte file. Let's put that into our storage account and let's designate every country as a distribution point. That's what they're doing here. So we're putting that data into our server locally here where we live in our country, and we've designated all of these points as distribution points. Those are called CDNs. These are content delivery network. Now the delivery network, you can say, oh, more than one makes the network. No, if you just had one CDN, it's still called one CDN. So, it sounds kind of funny in the English language, but the point is this one delivery network is composed of multiple servers and a big data center, and people are connecting to it to pull down data into wherever they are locally. So they're showing this picture here, and this is out of an, I don't know, an Azure slide somewhere, but this is a person here who needs that data. Let's say he's going to install the SIM today. He's going to connect and put in, he's off. Here it comes. It's downloading. Where's it downloading from? His nearest data center, the part that's been designated as the CDN. Now, there could be other data centers in this area, but only one area in this case might be designed as the only CDN for flight simulator. The other ones are used for business, and they want to overload them. And, we're not going to use all those resources. We're just going to use the resources of this CDN, and we're only going to allocate 20 servers for them. So, you just decide, depending on the demand, how many servers can be allocated, or can it be dynamic? Can the servers grow as the demand grows? We can do that. Or does it shrink as the demand isn't there? We can do that. And again, those things cost money, of course. Everything here that you touch, everything in an Azure portal, we have to be careful about. I would like 20 servers. Boom. That's going to cost you. So, you got to be careful when you're clicking away, because it's just a web interface, and we can allocate hundreds of thousands of dollars for the resources just by clicking. So the point is here that this is actually copied because I put it in here where I'm living here. I put this data in here, and I want it to be available in all those distribution points, is what they're really called. They do this for email too, you guys. But we put this in here, or for attachments for email. But we put this in here, and the fiber backbone will copy it to all the CDNs overnight, or at a slower rate, or whenever it's not so busy. But the point is, you'll know when it's ready in each CDN. And they'll have done this ahead of time before the SIM was launched. All right? They'll have done this ahead of time. It's sitting everywhere in the world ready for us to start. All of us on launch day at 11 a.m. my time, Eastern, which is where I am here in Florida and in Toronto, 11 a.m., boom, we all started installing. Oh, this whole network went, yeehaw, and every one of these distribution points got overloaded. That's what they're saying. They're saying our CDNs got overloaded. Too many people attempted to download. Now, they can do efficient downloading, you guys. There's all kinds of ways to do efficient downloading over internet, etc. But they got overloaded, all of them, even though it was distributed. It wasn't all of us hitting the core where we put the file. It was all of us hitting our local CDN, whatever they designated as their CDN. And there's the distribution network that gave us our SIM. Once our SIM was installed, that 15 gigabyte download, now it's going to, a lot of us have seen the screen now. Now it's going to go out and get data as we start using the SIM, whether it be career mode or photography or free flight or any of the activities or whatever's going on. And very good for them to say, we're not going to show you the marketplace yet. Because next, people would be in there buying stuff left and right or seeing what they got, and now we're pulling even more data. So, luckily they avoided that bullet. And frustrated a lot of people, but still, that was a smart move, not allowing the marketplace yet. Well, it's still being refined. So, so that was one thing. But that hopefully that helps you understand. When Seb yesterday was talking about, our CDNs were overloaded, and and what exactly does that mean? And this is the diagram that will help you with that, right? They do call them edge servers. When they showed us those graphs, they come straight out of the reports you can pull out of Azure. We'll teach how to do that, and those reports are from edge servers. If you look back at that video yesterday and you just see them showing you that, I think it was like a very dark graph. They use night mode on their graphs. Some of us use white for our mode on our graphs. And they were showing, here's all the faults, and then here's we turned off that service and it flatlined. It's like, what? And so they did this, and they were showing you the graph. And you'll notice it says it's an edge server graph. All right, so that's what they were showing us. Faults, I think it was faults. I'll go back and have a look. But, those were edge servers, meaning they're on the edge of Microsoft's Azure network, ready for us to receive in the public domain. All right, now we actually do have a secure connection to that CDN, and we pulled down that data, and that's how it happened. But these are all called, like the physical servers that are in here are called edge servers that are delivering this content and streaming it to us, right? There's a similar network for lots of other things. When you're connected to your Netflix account in whatever country you're in, they have a distribution point for Netflix in your country, and this is why you can't get that title in another country. Or you're traveling, like Noiseboy Mike travels a lot too, like I used to, right? And you can't get that movie because you're in the wrong country. Well, so what do? We VPN. And this is something that they were doing, I think from Europe they were doing this, or was it UK? They were VPNing into the USA, and now they could download stuff and get the SIM running. So the content delivery network here, which is vast and huge and the biggest in the world, for Microsoft anyways, right here in the USA, they were VPNing in here and then having success because there were CDNs here that had enough headroom, a breathing room that could handle that extra load of those VPNing in. And so that's how that worked when you heard about people using that solution. A brilliant IT person told those people, and I remember it was some article that Two-Tone found too, that he said people are VPNing in and getting it done, all right? And that's how they did it. They went to another content delivery network access point, edge server, and away it went. Speedy, how you doing? Let's see what's going on here. 28,000 minutes of roughly 19.5 days. What? DevStream was 78. Okay. Glad I was out of town on day one. Worked out well for me. Yeah. All right. I can't even get the 15 gig download. That's my peeve. So, Rad, you're in Canada. Your nearest data center distribution point would be Quebec City. So yours... that should not be an issue. I don't know what's going on there because I'm going to say to you, from east of Quebec City, they have the least amount of connections, the least amount of businesses that are huge anyway, connecting to Azure. So they don't need any more data centers further east of Quebec City. Quebec City and Toronto are still pretty close. And that's where the core of the business for Microsoft comes from. So that's why the data centers are there. Now, they put these data centers in place. I think I got a diagram for that. They've got to make sure that the data centers are far enough apart that if a nuclear disaster happens, I'm serious, you guys, this is a plan. You plan for every contingency. If a nuclear disaster happens at that data center, is my data somewhere else? Can I still get at my company data? That's super important, right? In our classrooms, we use the example, and bless their hearts and all of the first responders. I mean, we use the example, and we have to use the example of what happened in New York when the North Tower got hit, and then the South Tower got hit. And there were. Let me say this. We're not going to talk about that, but the data for companies, tons of data was sitting in the North Tower on servers, and they had redundancy in the South Tower, saying we got it in two different buildings. We've got redundant data. Whole companies and all their historic data were wiped out because both towers went. All right, and so we only mention that in IT classes to say that how far away should your data be in your secondary data location. All right, now let me give you another example too. Banks have to have data. They have to. They're holding all our data. They're holding our money. They're holding everything that's very important to the economy. And so banks have multi-million-dollar data centers. I've been in many of them. And those data centers have a backup data center somewhere else, at least one, somewhere else. And we would regularly do IT fire drills. And what that simply means is we are going to simulate shutting down the main data center. Does the backup data center provide that data, and does it provide it instantaneously, even though it could be 100 miles away? And this is something we did. And I got to go play with stuff like this, you guys. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in data centers, and we're playing. Let's go for a weekend. They're going to pay us a lot of money to show up with our team on a weekend and shut down their servers. It's like, yeah, baby. And it was a nervous thing. And if it didn't work right, now we have to figure out why. And we have to add more resources to figure out why. Well, we had a fire drill on the launch of this SIM, and it didn't go well. And they learned from it, of course, and they're going to adjust, of course. Now, who's responsible for that? I said there's two people that are speaking to us about it. They are the ones where the buck stops here. The CEO of Asobo, Sebastian. The CEO of Microsoft Flight Simulator, Jorg. The two of them are apologizing left and right because the buck stops here. And so now they're adjusting, of course, right? So let me just show you a couple of things here. So cloud models here, and one of the reasons they call it services instead of servers is because the servers are the physical boxes. They're usually, in the old days, they're mini towers. I've even built lots of servers locally, mini towers. They look like our PC that sits on the floor kind of thing. But the real data servers you'd see in these data centers are rack mounts. And they're sitting in racks. And I'm going to show you a picture of that. And there could be, in a company, hundreds of these. Each one is a very powerful server. Some of these rack mounts are also storage. tons of hot swappable hard drives and all this other cool stuff. These data centers are air conditioned, they're secured, they've got fiber connecting them, they got all kinds of beautiful stuff going on, which I helped build and I helped support back in the day. And so when you have cloud services, you're going to move stuff to the cloud, you can physically move your hard drives. Seriously, take that hard drive and ship it. Seriously, FedEx it to Azure. And they will put it in a server for you, so you have the same server. I'm serious. They can do that. That's kind of like, it's still physical, right? And so that's what they call here. Your on-premise here is everything you have in your server room here. This is all your different stuff that's in your server room. Lots of money. You got to keep that going. The physical part of it, the power for it has to be reliable with, battery backup systems and all the rest. Your storage is humongous in different tiers. All of this is IT stuff that I taught for years for local server rooms. Now you're going to move to the cloud. You start looking at, okay, first of all, infrastructure as a service. You still have to, you notice in here it says managed by Microsoft. So they're going to take away some of that for you and manage it and keep it reliable. Some of it. All right, you're still managing the actual operating system. You still have to own the operating system, whether it be Linux or Windows. You still have to, all the stuff that you install, your application could be, in my case, I was a specialist for Exchange servers, email servers. So you have to keep those applications running the way you're supposed to and keep up their databases. So you're still doing partial of what you did before, but Microsoft is handling other things like storage, like the networking part and all the servers. And this is great. Now you go completely over to something called Platform as a Service. And Platform as a Service, you still manage your application and the data itself. You decide how much data you're going to use and how much it's going to cost you. But they're running everything, including the operating system. And you notice virtualization is across the board. You can have it locally at your server room, or you can have it here. But the point is, managed by Microsoft becomes a bigger piece. And the biggest piece is going to be software as a service. And you'll see things like, they're managing it all. There's nothing you own at all. For instance, Office 365 in the cloud. We don't have any servers for that. We're not serving that to our employees. That's all in the cloud. Now, that's what we're doing right now. We've got a thin client, which, think of your email. You open up Outlook at work. A lot of people use Outlook at work, right? Microsoft's Outlook. That's the client program. That's the tiny client program that runs on your PC and gets your email. But it's talking to the Exchange server, which is in the cloud. Client-server relationship and exchanging secure data all the time. Your emails, you're sending emails, you're getting emails. Perfect client-server model. Now, we're running Flight Simulator. Are we sending data too? Yeah. How's multiplayer work, right? How does it know where you are, right? So we are sending some data to them. They're sending a ton of data to us. So we have a client-server relationship. Our client is our local box, our local, application. And when we get a patch, you notice they're not calling it an update. It's not a world update. It's not even a SIM update. It's a patch to our local 15 gigabyte file that we have right now, right? And that's our patch we had. There's another patch coming, right? But guess what? When they need to put a world update in, when they already want to put in all the world updates, they put them into their servers now. We never see those updates anymore. We don't download those tons of gigabytes anymore. That's cool. They just slipstream them, as we say, into their servers, and that update is now there. Wow, talk about powerful, which is really cool. All right, Azure, you've read all this while I'm talking about it. Cloud computing service of Microsoft operates or established data centers in 36 countries, 163 locations, and I can show you right here. 300 physical data centers. Each one of these are hundreds of millions of dollars. And latency-defined perimeter linked by over 175,000 miles of terrestrial and subsea fiber optic networks. They're all connected by fiber, and that's how our content delivery network works. But, these are designed for business, and these are just dots, you guys. But we can, in our Azure interface, we can click on these and find out more data and decide whether we want to use them as a CDN. So we can do that, right? But anyway, things you've heard of before, LinkedIn, OneDrive, all of us have a OneDrive. We're all got a free 5 gig to start with, right? I still got 25 gigs because I'm grandfathered in from all the years. I've had OneDrive since it was called SkyDrive. And all the, Microsoft Teams, their collaborative product. Here's their Office product. Azure itself, Bing data we use. That's on the servers. All this stuff has come from the cloud for years. All right. So this is why when I talk about Azure, everything's coming from Azure. And I mentioned this on Two-Tone Stream the other day. I think it was last week, or they were trying to sort out what was going on. And Two-Tone came up with this beautiful diagram, a whiteboard diagram. He's got it figured out. But a lot of people, when I said, it's all in Azure, they didn't. There were some people that do not believe me. Like, they think Azure is a thing, and then they think that the SIM is something else. It's not. The SIM is connecting to Azure, which is our data centers, which does it all. So everything you see listed here and our SIM, we could put that on here on the list. Now Flight Simulator 2 connects here. Certainly Game Pass uses at least the multiplayer piece of it, but it pulls down games from the cloud. So, all of this stuff is coming from the Azure data centers. Azure's the name we give to the cloud computing services sitting in those huge data centers around the world. And that's what it is. It's just clarifying what it is. To give you a brief insight, this is like, okay, this is the dashboard for Azure. And there's all this stuff we have to teach and have them figure out what it is. And here's East US stuff going on here, service bus, and here's Azure functions, and here's all, it's all gobbledygook for most of us, right? But this is the web-based tool for managing all of your cloud services. And believe it or not, now, they're just moving tiles around on this page, but believe it or not, they can come into this page and allocate services with a click, and deallocate services, and make services dynamic, and add more services, and they can do everything here with a click. So it can be that dynamic. It can be that quick, you guys. It can be immediately fixed if they really want it to be. They're monitoring. You notice that graph? I'm thinking they're watching the faults. They're watching the bad connections. They're watching how bad it is. And they're letting the graph keep going. Wait a second. I know you want to gather data and you want to see what's going on, but can you do something while you're watching it and see what's going on, right? Yeah. Ace says, keep in mind, they start allowing people to download assets. The more you choose to download, the more it will have to be updated locally when they do roll out the server-side updates. That is true, you guys. Keep in mind, like, our rolling cache that you see here, our rolling cache is a FIFO cache, meaning first in, first out, like any inventory system, right? When you get, let's say, a new jug of milk and you put it in your fridge, you should be taking the half jug of milk and bringing it to the front and putting your new jug of milk in the back, right? I mean, is that a good analogy? You want to use up your old stuff first. Well, in here in the rolling cache, if they put new stuff in there, we want that old stuff gone. Push it out of there. I mean, update the cache up for us, right? And so some people are using the rolling cache. They're using the extra 32 gigabytes that they have in their memory of their computer as a rolling cache, because every time they turn off their computer, it's gone and they have to pull in new data every time. So there's a good point that Ace is making. What mechanism do they have to bring in that new data? They're going to put in a world update and they're going to stream it to us as we fly. Will we get that like into our cache right away? Like, how does that work? So these are things we still got to figure out, you guys, is how are they doing it? All right. Because we do have this local cache, which we had before, but this local cache now has everything. Now I've redone this diagram. They had a diagram where it was upside down. They had everything going upwards like this, saying going to your local machine. It's like, well, that's not right. So, I had to turn it around. Probably right here. Oh yeah, this is it right here. This is theirs, and I took their diagram and wrecked it. So, they had everything here, which is the cloud going up into the cache, which is your local machine going into your simulator. It's like, wait a second. Most people look at the cloud as coming from up there somewhere down into our machine where we're sitting. So this is so typical of Microsoft. Gorgeous diagram. This explains it all. But the point is, they send their data. They say, here's what we want to do they give it to their artists to make their presentations. Every single course I taught for Microsoft, they give me the slides, and I would spend days modifying, putting graphics in, getting rid of bullets, and making them more interesting, because here's a perfect example. They give it to an artist, and an artist goes, this would look good if we put everything on the bottom, and then we put Flight Simulator at the top, and that'll really clear things up. Everybody's confused. They're going, why is this in the cloud? No, it's not. It's down on the local machine. So we got a lot of people that have said to me, you should change that diagram. So I did. So here's what we really have. From the cloud, which we'll think of as out there, out our internet connection, somewhere out there. Other people's computers, like Ace says, absolutely. Another data center from Microsoft. And here's what we have today Everything comes in to the rolling cache. The only thing we have here is our little client program, 15 gigabytes. That's it. And our patch we just had Monday. Well, we've actually had 2 patches so far, but Monday we know about the patch. And this Monday coming is another patch. And they're gonna add something to that. All right, but here's what we had with the old flight simulator. I'll call it the old flight simulator now, 2020. We still had stuff coming in, photogrammetry, vector data, aerials, and there's stuff that when people said, I don't have any photogrammetry on my machine, we say, do you have internet turned on? Are you able to go you might have photogrammetry shut off in your settings. So we go into settings. Oh yeah, it's off. Oh yeah, multiplayer's off. Oh yeah. And all this stuff was off. You weren't getting this live data stuff coming into your cache. We still had a rolling cache, and some of us had no rolling cache, but they still made one for us. And some of us made a number in here and made a bigger cache. And that seemed to help with stutters going into airports and stuff like that. So we were playing with this number. You can still play with this one too, but it should not be more than 32. This one, it starts at 16. Do it in increments if you wish, if you want to test your bandwidth, but it shouldn't be more than 32. And then if you have extra memory, you can turn this into a RAM drive. You can just Google that and make your own RAM drive in your memory. And then when your machine turns off, it has to bring in a rolling cache every time. And that might be the answer to give you the freshest data. But in the old days, right up until we moved to our new sim, the planes, the airports, the POIs, the meshes, the textures, all the world updates, all that stuff we had to download and wait for it to finish downloading. It forced us into this until we were finished, and then we could run the simulator and away we go. So now we don't have all this. And yesterday on their stream, they talked about, well, you could download all your own planes, but it's about 3 terabytes. And people were confused at that. You go to the forums now and people are going, oh, I got 3 terabytes of storage. I could download all that stuff and I'll have all my planes local. They think it's the whole sim is 3 terabytes, and they're wrong. The whole sim database is 9 petabytes, probably more now. And they're talking about your planes. They weren't even talking about the airports or POIs or meshes, right? They're saying you could download your planes locally and it would take up 3 terabytes. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to bring it all in. Even if you own it, it'll still be there if you need it and you see it in the sky. That's the idea behind it. It's all dynamic now. And they had to move to this model because it's so big. You cannot install the whole flight simulator onto your hard drive. You haven't got a big enough hard drive in existence. You can also make a RAID array. You could go, for those who know how, take a ton of hard drives and put them all together and make them into one big hard drive. You could do that and bring in the sim, and you still can't get it all. It's so big, it's got to stay. They got the whole world here, you guys. It's got to stay in the cloud. And that's how they did it from the start. And now they're including all of the other stuff to go with it. Why do we need an airport in the UK if I'm flying in southern Illinois, right? So why do we need all that stuff to come in every time we start the sim if we're never going to fly there at the moment? If I change my location and go over to UK and start flying there, why do I need my North American scenery downloaded and sitting here waiting? I don't. All right, so this is a very efficient model, but now we got servers working really hard. Anyway, that might help. All right, so here's an example. City Update Germany, challenges, City Update Texas, City Update European Cities 1, all streamed in, you guys. And this is what I mean by they'll slipstream into their servers in the cloud all the new stuff, and new stuff coming through in the coming months, right? In the coming years too, will all be sent to their servers, not sent to us in our local PCs and our local Xboxes. That's cool. And you can just see that by going in here. And here, if you want to download all your own planes, and if you own this edition, here's everything you get. Let's take all of that, 3 terabytes of stuff, and pull it into our local machine. Is it worth it? So that's what they're saying. That's what they talked about yesterday. Yeah, I guess you could if you wanted to. And it's like, I don't think there's an option, but that's what would happen. All right, so what is an Azure? I'll finish up. What does an Azure data center look like? Well, this could be an Amazon distribution center for all we know, And believe it or not, look at all these air conditioner units. Ooh, there's something going. Maybe this is a refrigeration warehouse. Huh? You know what I mean? And and so this is actually an Azure data center. This one is in Denmark. And And there's, you know, I could show you one from each one. There's not very many employees here right now. So it must be like they're just building it. But, and they just keep expanding it. And a lot of stuff is going to sit on the roof. All of this up here is all Azure packs. And we'll talk about that in a minute here. Let me show you another picture. These are Azure packs. And there's lots of room for growth here. This is a new, we'll call it a factory. This is a new data center they're building. And they're just bringing in a crane and plunking these. Each one of these could hold 1,000 servers. Each module here holds 1,000 servers. That one holds 1,000 servers. All rack mount, all beautiful. And each one is connected with fiber. Each one is liquid cooled. Each one is like unbelievable amount of resources for one cube that they drop in with a crane. And look at all the cubes that are there already. They're just starting to build this data center and they've got room for growth. And guess what? This is the most efficient place to put everything is on the roof. They're venting humid air out into the atmosphere. Why not? Why have that inside and now you have to vent it outside somehow? Just put them on the roof. And it's so easy to plunk them in, hook them up, and away they go. They even have portable ones that they do along the way. How is it unplayable for you or nearly unplayable because of long loading times? You know, 16K connection, Mahoney, 16K. The minimum is 10 megabits. You have only 16K connection. Yeah, well, that's why you're having long loading times, man. If you looked at the prereqs for this, I mean, I'm sorry to say, if you looked at the prereqs for this, I'm sure the prereqs were like 10 megabits for small one. Everybody remember? It was this guy right here. Right here. Let's just show that for a minute. So right here, 10 megabits is the very smallest bandwidth you need. 100 is ideal. 50 is recommended. And you're saying you only have a 16K connection. Holy smokes. No wonder you're having troubles, right? It's expected. I would have looked at this and said, you're going to have trouble. And I know you don't want to hear it. I don't like saying it, you know, but I know you won't want to hear it, but there's why. And it's because it's all streamed. I would suggest you stick with 2020. So here they are craning one in. This is called an Azure pack, you guys. In here are literally 1,000 servers, all rack mounted. That's not what you're seeing here. They're inside. You have to open it up and they'll connect this with fiber. They'll connect it with water, believe it or not. They'll connect this with electricity with redundant power supplies that are built in the back here. And this is one of could be hundreds at that data center. And this is what they're doing now. They're building them in a factory and shipping them where they need them. And let's say Denmark says, yeah, we're nearing capacity. We need more. We need about another 20% more. They would ship these in next day. And within a week, they'd be hooked up and ready to go, right? Within a week, they could go up 20% of capacity because they've got this mobility. Here they are again. Here's the sitting on the roof. They've got room for more over here. This is room for more expansion. And there's your vents that send the humid air out. And these are all, each one of these, one cube there, one more cube behind it. And look at them all stacked up. This is a data center. Oh, it's like, are you kidding me? Let me show you one thing that's a novelty, you guys. This guy here working on one of the Azure data centers. I just wanted to show you because look at this up top. What do you think this big pipe is, you guys? That's water. That's for water cooling right there, that big pipe. Look at all the big, huge bolts holding down everything right here. These are all, these are the equivalent of the cubes I just showed you. Each one of these, look at all the fans. Each one of these things, these ones here are probably storage servers, right? But it doesn't, you can't tell by looking at them. But look at the umbilical of cable going across the top. And these are curved. You can see they've got a bit of a curve to them. And guess what? Look at this big tube at the end. You know, submarines. This is actually the place where they built this. Look at the platforms up here. They built this here. This guy's still finishing it. Look at the cables. The cables. They're building a data center. They put this data center inside the tube, and they put the tube in the water. They put this in the ocean. They drop this down to the ocean floor. It's a data center being water cooled by the ocean. And they don't have to pay rent because it's sitting on the ocean floor. You know? And NUPID knows about this. Yeah. And there's one of these right now. Now, they did a test for 3 years off the coast of California. It was so successful, they moved it, or built a new one, and moved it to off the coast of Scotland. This one here is off the coast of Scotland, right? I had a student who applied at Microsoft. He got certified through 4 of my courses, so I knew him because he kept coming back, and he kept coming back for all his certifications. And I saw him in different countries, not different countries, I saw him in different cities in different courses. It's like I would travel to Boston, and he's there in my classroom. I go, are you stalking me or am I stalking you? You know, I mean, that was a great relationship we had. He applied at Microsoft after he got certified. He wrote all the exams, and they accepted him, and he said, I want to work in the data center in Scotland. And he got it. He's one of the, it's not him in this picture, but he's one of the workers, or he was at that time, one of the workers that worked on the Scotland data center. Now, they don't go underwater. He says, I'm a scuba diver, I'd love to do that. They don't go down like a submarine and go through some air hatch to get in. There's none of that going on. They bring it up to the surface like this. Here he is closing the hatch, and they're going to send it out. Look out. And here's an example of it on the barge being ready to be submerged. And this is the umbilical that's supplying all the fiber data and power to this thing. That's it. But look, the size of the person compared to that umbilical cord, right? And here it is after they brought it back up to do some servicing on it. You can see that's been down there for a few years. Look at that. And so this is actually a data center. And this is so successful, they want to do more. But they got to get permission in each country. They got to have permission to put this in the water. And they got activists that say, what about the fish? And what about the, you know, and there's all of that. And they have to be conscious of the environment when they do this. But it's a very real thing. And I would bet there's already more of them, but I haven't kept track. You know, I'm not tuning in to see what's going on with this. I would have loved to see this up close and personal, but, you know, only one person I know has actually been near it. Anyway, pretty cool. That's all there is there, you guys. That's all. And then thank you for hanging in on the most boring topic in the world. And I thought I would just shed a bit of light on that. I did say it would be 10 minutes, but man, it became something bigger, right?